Hi everyone, I'm Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and I'd like to share 5 quilting tips to help you organize your quilting experience from the very beginning. That's before you sew a single stitch. Confusion causes mistakes, and I'm here to help you avoid some of the confusion that can cost you missteps, wasted fabrics, and lots of time. Now, every pattern is written differently, and there are so many different patterns available in the quilting world. I have found over the years that it is not always easy at first glance to keep track of each and every task the pattern requires without some sort of a system. So I'm going to walk you through my 5 ways that I mark and organize my quilt pattern before I begin sewing. That helps me stay on track. So let's get started. I'm going to walk you through 5 ways to mark your pattern, and I have saved my favorite for number 4 and number 5, so please keep watching. Also, if you'd like to see more of our videos and our quilting tips, please like and subscribe to our channel so that we can offer more helpful quilting tips along the way. The first tip I have is just using a plain old pencil. This is a regular, Bic pencil, mechanical pencil, any kind of pencil will work. You want to make sure that it has an eraser on it. Why is that? Because you want to be able to erase the marks off of your pattern so that the next time that you use it, you're not confused. So I'm just going to show you a few of my patterns. Again, as I said, they are all different. Everything is set up in a different way. Every designer has their own favorites when it comes to how they set up their pattern, how they cut the pieces, how they walk you through the process of assembling your quilt. So each and every time that you open a new quilt pattern, you have to learn that particular designer's system, and that can be difficult. So this particular type of marking is just taking your pencil, and I'll show you what I did. I made this labyrinth walk, which I love, made it for my grandson, and it's folded into pages, but when you open it up, you have a diagram of the finished quilt, and then you have all the pages that go with the quilt assembly. So we're going to start here. We're going to take a look at how we begin, and as you can see, I made this a while ago. All I did was I took my pencil, and each time I did what it said to do, I checked it off. So I just have check marks. I have check marks all the way through the pattern, and I knew as I was assembling the pattern, I knew what steps I had finished, and I knew where I needed to start again. The only thing you have to be careful about is, first of all, if you've written really hard, it's hard to erase it completely. So you could have a shadow check mark that you think you've already done that step the second time around, and that can cause a bit of an issue. You want to make sure that you can see your markings, because if you can't see them, let's say I marked this one here, and then I went and marked this one over here, I don't always realize that I completed that step, and I could easily redo a step by accident, waste pieces that are set aside for another part of the block, and that would cause a problem, especially if I have a limited amount of fabric and I don't have any more to replace it with. So what I want to make sure is when I check mark things, I do it always in the same spot all the time. That way I know that it is completed as I go along. So that's the pencil marking way. Now, this pattern was a purchase pattern. I bought it. I have 1 copy, that's it. This pattern I actually downloaded from the internet. I bought it, I downloaded it, and I can reprint it over and over and over again. So if I want to mark this up and use an ink pen, it really doesn't make any difference because I could just reprint another one. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste the paper, and I don't want to reprint this pattern every time I make the quilt. And I'm telling you, I have made this quilt several times, and I love it. So when you take a look at the pattern, as you can see, many of the pieces are the same size, but you use all different fabrics to create the quilt because it's got that ribbon look. So when you open the pattern, it's very neat. The way that it's written in this particular pattern, she has all the horizontal pieces labeled A, B, C, D, E, F with an H after it, so you know they're horizontal, and then she does the same thing for the vertical pieces, A, B, C, D, E, F with a V after it. But they're all different. Everything is different in this. And I didn't use these fabrics that she has listed here. I used my own. So what I did was I cut up some pieces of all the fabrics I was going to use, and I labeled them accordingly. So this is A H, horizontal, BH, CH, DH, and so on. And then I put those horizontally, and then I put these vertically. So you can come up with a system in your pattern. If you need to identify fabrics, I love to be able to just take those fabric swatches, then there is absolutely no way that I'm going to mix them up. If you don't have room on your pattern, you can always put them on the back of a sheet if you've printed it, or just get another sheet of paper and put them on there and label them so that you know. Now, once you have cut all the pieces, you can see for this particular one, I had to keep cutting all these different pieces. I actually have some squares that I cut, they're just some scraps, and I used a pen and I put the letters on there, AH, BH, and so on. I put those on, and I would pin these pieces to the stack of fabrics that I actually needed, the rectangles or the squares or whatever it was, and that way I didn't get them mixed up. So I knew my AH were all together, and then my BH were all together, and I just kept them that way. You can do it with fabric, and then these can be reused, although probably not with this one. But I actually have done that with paper as well, just printed off little squares with the letters on them, and then I've labeled my fabric. The other thing you can do is you can label your fabric pieces with pins that have markings on them. These are called the ABC 123 Cool pins, and as you can see, they have a ton in the packaging. They're not very expensive. They're by Gypsy Quilt. And if you take a look at this, they're all by letter or number. The letter is on the back side and the number is on the front. So you can use whichever one you want. It says on here they're heat resistant. Well, okay, this one I accidentally touched my iron to it, this one too, and guess what? The number disappeared. So I had to write it on there with a marker. But I like the fact that I can just take the pin and pin it in whatever it needs to go in, A, B, C, D, or E. I can separate the horizontal and the vertical, and that way I have those pins marking that. So they come like this, and like I say, you get a ton of them in the package, so they work really well, and I like using those as well. So that's my second way of marking your pattern, is to put those swatches. Now again, I used a washable glue stick to stick these pieces on here, but I did write the letters on here just in regular pen, because if I take these off and I do it again with different swatches, I'm still going to use those same letters. So that's just another hint when you're doing that. If it's something that's going to be in the pattern that you'll need to use, you can leave those on there marked permanently, but then these are temporary and you can remove them. Now I love this system. I love this one, a color-coded system. I have these little tiny labels. They remove cleanly, so you can take them off and move them around if you need to. But every pattern is, again, written in its own way. And this particular pattern, there's a lot of information that's put together in just a few pages, as you can see. First of all, there are several pieces that go into each block, and you have to cut all those pieces out. That can be confusing. So they are labeled here, A through L of white background, M through T of the truck fabric, and so on. So what I have is, again, I have those pieces of fabric that I have marked. They're just scraps, and I've marked them with numbers. You can pin those to the pieces that you've cut. You can also do, as I showed you before, and use those pins. But that's all once you have cut your pieces. We're talking here about just reading the pattern. It's so important that you read through the entire pattern before you even begin, especially when it's complicated like this. You need to know where you're going when it comes to the pattern. So as we look at this particular pattern, I want to know what sections I have. And when I read through the pattern, the sections were not all labeled as I expected. It says Vintage Christmas 2. I would have expected this section to be labeled truck, because that's what it is. We've got a truck here, and that's what we're starting to piece. So I put my little blue dot on there to let me know that I'm starting something new here. So whatever block you are starting in the pattern, I want to label that block, and again, that's going to stay there. That's not removable. As I go along, I put my truck together, and I've read through to see how to do it, cut my pieces. And then I find the next thing is presents, and presents are actually labeled. So here they are, but I want to know when I'm going to get to presents. So I put a little blue dot there. I've made my presents. My presents are going to be hooked onto my truck. If I want, I can take one of these little dots, and I can actually put a dot right here, because this is where I'm going to assemble the truck and the presents together. So that's important. As I turn the page, I go on and I would expect this page to be labeled tree, but it's not. There's no tree there. We got holly border, we've got no tree. But I know this is where tree starts, so I'm going to put a dot there to make sure that I start my tree right there, and I make my tree. Now I'm ready to do my border. I've marked my holly border. I've marked my pinwheel sashing strips. I've marked my assemble the quilt center part, and then I can mark also when I'm adding my borders and when I am finishing my quilt. So this is a helpful walkthrough when it comes to where I am in the pattern. I like being able to color code those. Now, color coding the sections, I used blue, but maybe if I had a section where I had different blocks that I was using, I might want to color code the blocks each time it was being used with a different color. So for example, if I had an Ohio Star block that I'm using for the first and the fourth block, I'll put a green dot. And then maybe I have a pinwheel, I'll put a yellow dot, whatever, so that I know when the new blocks are coming, I've labeled them and I've color coded them. That's something that's only going to make sense to you. You're going to figure out as you read through your pattern what you want to mark that's of importance to you. But my point with this particular tip is mark those major sections of your pattern. Take a look. That'll help you, first of all, because you will have read through it to find those, but it will help you find those little spots, like I said, where things are not labeled the way you would expect, and you might not pick the pieces up. You're just going to waste some time. And this way, you know that trees start right here. You're not wasting any time here. We've got that going, and then we move on to our holly border. So color coding our pattern is just kind of a visual aid. It quickly helps us identify where we are in the process. And if you want, once you've completed that particular section, put a check mark there. You can always check it with your pencil. It's removable, and that way you know I've already finished the holly border. I am ready to move on to the pinwheel sashing strips. Now, this is my absolute favorite tip for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I love Patterns by Annie. I love them. She puts her patterns together in such a way that they are so easy to make. I love what they do. I love the way that she is so clear and concise about the way they go together. And I am easily able to mark them as I go along because of the way that she has them set up. So I've made several of these, and I'm just going to show you what the pattern looks like inside and how the marking system works on this particular type of pattern. Project bag. She's got a nice picture on the front. When you open it up, Annie always has, you get your money's worth with her patterns, because look, you can make 4 different bags from this pattern. But here's where you need to do some marking, and a lot of patterns are set up this way where you get more for one pattern. You get more sizes or types or whatever, and you want to make sure that you are making the right one as you go along. So if you look at this one, she has small, medium, large, and extra large. Those are the ones, the finished sizes of the bags. So we've got small, medium, large, and extra large. Let's say I'm going to make the extra large pattern. So what I want to do is I'm going to take my friction pen, which these are the highlighters, not the straight pens. These are the highlighters. And it says they're removed by friction, which means you can erase them. There's a little eraser on the end, but they also are heat removable. So I'm going to show you both. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and I want to mark every time I am using the extra large measurements. So I've marked with yellow here, I've marked with yellow here, and all of these are actually marked so that I know this is what I am cutting out. I am not cutting out these. I need everything that I have marked here in yellow. And then I will go through my pattern, and as I'm creating it, I know I have the correct pieces all labeled. Here's the cool part about Annie's patterns. She has little check boxes next to everything you need to do all the way through the pattern, and I absolutely love that, because then I can actually use a pencil and check it off if I want, or I can use a different color of my marker and I can check that off as I go along. When I have finished either cutting or when I've finished the steps, I can mark it. So now you're wondering, if you've done that, how do you make more? Well, this, remember, is the friction pen. So we can actually erase those marks using the end of our pen. Look at how nicely that goes. Now, the other thing you can do that, but you're using the eraser, or you can take your iron. So now what we can do is, I have this set on a synthetic setting, which is like very medium. And you just hold on here. It doesn't ruin your pattern. And look at that, everything is gone. You just place it on here and you're ready to start over again with your pattern. The other nice thing about this erasable capability is, I didn't do it down here, but if you are erasing on here, let's say you thought you finished this step and you didn't really, you can still erase it and it looks good, and you've got that bright color so that you can see it. It's not like using a pencil like I did in the first example. You actually can really see what's going on here. So I love this. I love being able to just place my iron on here and those markings are gone. And then I can do that all the way through the pattern. I can put my pattern down, pick it up, and I know exactly what I'm doing. So these types of pens, the friction pens, actually have gotten kind of a bad reputation among quilters simply because the pen that you can use to mark fabric comes off with the heat, but it comes back when it gets cold, or it can come back. And quilters are afraid to use it on the top of their quilts. But they were actually made for using this on a piece of paper to erase the paper. And that's what we're doing here, and it works really well. So I love Annie's patterns, and I love using the friction pens to mark them and then to remove those marks with heat or with the eraser. My last method of marking is called using a progress tracker. Kind of what I showed you with the Annie's pattern, checking off the boxes, but again, not every pattern has that. Now, this is a Bonnie Hunter book, Scraps and Shirt Tails, and she does a great pattern. The way that she has it set up, it's so easy to follow. But I like to check off my steps as I complete them. So let's say, for example, that we're going to do this goose in the puddle. She has all the steps listed on the side. So what I did was I just took my pen and I just made my own boxes all along here. Those are going to stay because I'll mark them completed and then I will remove those marks. You can do it with a pencil as before, or you can take your friction pen and you can mark it this way if you want to do that as well. It works. It also comes off. So if I'm going to hold that on there, it doesn't ruin my book, my paper. This is the glossy paper. Didn't ruin the paper, took the mark off. And as you can see, the way that these books are, she has all the instructions written, but then she has the same instructions duplicated with diagrams. So I didn't know which way I was going to do it. So I actually put my little squares next to all the diagrams as well. When I finish my 8 matching units per block, 200 total, I give it a check. When I cut 4 matching units and get 100 total, I give it a check. And then once that is all done, and you can do it with any of your pens. I mean, you can do it with the pink one. You can do it with whatever one you can see better, or maybe if you're color coding somehow, and then you just remove it like that. It is so slick. I absolutely love it. I really feel it's important to mark my patterns as best as I can. It keeps me organized, and I know that it saves me time as well. So there you have it. 5 ways to temporarily mark your pattern so that you can use and reuse it over and over and over again and still stay organized each and every time. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you for watching.